the virtual community event for remote collaboration for business and development teams. So hopefully that is the session that you're looking for. And both myself and Quincy will be presenting that. Quincy is a principal transformation consultant with AgileThought, and I'm one of the senior Agile coaches in our Transform practice. So for today, we're going to go through the time, talk about the why should development and business teams collaborate with each other. We'll talk about any considerations then that are, because we're in this very much remote world for now, even as things start to reopen. And then talk about kind of when the business and the development teams are going to kind of get into each other's territory, where normally it would be a business team only or a development team only. Like, where do we start to cross-pollinate those things? I want to hand over to Quincy, so he's going to talk about remote collaboration for business and development teams.
All right, so why should business and dev teams collaborate? All right, so in a remote world, there are some different things, but whether you're remote or not, there's still good reason for the business and the dev team to have ongoing collaboration. And in this context, when we say the dev team, we're talking about not just the development team from the standpoint of coders, but the team that's actually doing the hands-on work to produce whatever product it is, to actually do the build. So focusing on solving the right problems. If that collaboration isn't there, then you can easily have the teams to run off and start really doing a lot of work, going in a direction that, quite frankly, may not be the right direction, like running really, really fast in a 5K, only to find out that you're not running towards the finish line. You're actually running somewhere else. Like, that would be a horrible thing to happen. Or as many of us have seen before in, let's say, football games or something like that, where someone happens to run towards the wrong goal. Like, that's a really bad thing. So that's the same type of thing when teams are not focused on solving the right problems. Well, how do they know what the right problem is to solve? The business needs to tell them, because the problems inevitably should be a problem that ultimately the end user of that product would have, because that's really, like, if someone won't buy the product, they won't use the product, then you're ultimately not solving, a problem for the market, and that's really where you want to be. So one of the other things that is key with that collaboration is, well, what is the expected delivery? What is it that the business is actually expecting versus what the team is actually doing? So everyone could be really clear as to what's in that backlog, what work should be done. But if you don't check in, periodically, if you don't have that collaboration there on an ongoing basis, then that, very well may get missed. So that brings us to the transparency and building trust. So having that level of collaboration there will, one, help the business to know what the dev team is doing. It helps the dev team to understand what's really important to the business. So you have that ongoing transparency. And we'll talk a little bit later too about, well, what if, something's going wrong and that expectation, now is compromised. So what do you do about that? So we'll talk about that as well. So out of these four things, Justin, is there anything that jumps out to you that, within your current context of, problems that you're working on, or things that team you're working with, looking to solve, that you would do different or could do different, going forward out of those four things?
I guess I can refer more to my last team and say that transparency would be probably the thing that needs to be increased the most from that team.
And what would you do differently to increase transparency, do you think?
Well, I think a lot of it for us would have had to do with getting other teams involved too, and the transparency was between teams as opposed to not just within the same team. So we need to get a lot of the team leaders or team members from other teams too to kind of work together to increase that transparency so that we can all, get to the same goal or get to a better
Yeah.
goal altogether.
Yeah, it's definitely really important when you have multiple teams that have cross dependencies to have some cadence, some mechanism to come together. So, we'll do sometimes a thing that we call pair team retros, where we'll bring two teams together that, one has a dependency on the other, or there's some kind of cross dependency there. And it's different than, say, like a scrum of scrums, where you're, bringing scrum masters together and so forth. This is really just those two teams that have that problem. And they discuss those specific things where they know they have that type of dependency that's been a problem, but they never get together and actually resolve it in any kind of way. They just kind of complain about it in passing or in their daily scrum, but they never really do anything about it. So the key there is, go ahead. The
there's lots of complaining, especially in our retros and dailies.
Yes. So the key there is to have some type of cadence to come together to discuss those specific things where that lack of transparency is really causing those problems. And that tends to be a very beneficial thing. How's it going, Hamoon? Glad to join.
Going good, thanks.
Good.
Glad to join too. Thanks. I'm just listening.
Sure. No worries. All right. So, what are new considerations when we're talking about remote? So, like what's different? So, even like the experience that you just shared, Justin, it's hard, sometimes to keep that alignment there, to keep that transparency there. And that's when you're in person. So when you're not in person, the truth is, it's even harder. Now, are there ways to mitigate that? Sure, and we're going to talk about that. But acknowledging and knowing that, well, this is going to be a little bit harder because we're not, we can't just walk across the hall or, meet in the conference room or whatever and just hash things out. So you have to be a lot more intentional with your cadences and when you're going to meet, and make sure everyone's on the same page, and making sure that there's a good tool to collaborate with as well, like Teams or Slack or something like that. That is very beneficial to have to hit things really quickly. So you want to increase that frequency of communication. And not only do you want to do health checks for the team, but you also want to do health checks for the business, which oftentimes is overlooked because everyone's usually, maybe concerned about, well, how are things going for the team? But it's good for the team to also know, well, how are things going for the business? Are we still tracking in the direction towards resolving, the business problems that we think we're solving, so those things are really important. And then the documentation needs to be better. So what's the reason why do you think the documentation may need to be better when you're remote, between business and dev specifically?
Yeah, I mean, I'm seeing that just some documentation needs, like we were alluding to. So I was on a phone call just recently, and we talked about a lot of things. Some of the notes were made like in the PowerPoint. So we were going through a PowerPoint with the client. Some of the notes just got made in there, so it was clear when we were deciding things. And then the conversation shifted to, do we capture in an Azure DevOps wiki, super lightweight, or do those action items become Azure DevOps backlog items, stories, tasks, things like that. So those are kind of 3 ways we've tried to beef up the documentation without making it heavyweight.
Yeah, even, you know, when you think about like the team working agreements, you know, I know I normally, you know, advocate very strongly for it to be very visible somewhere physically near where the team is, you know, so they can walk by it, they can see it, everyone can kind of refer to it, you know, when needed, especially, you know, during their daily scrums and so forth. But you can't do that when you're remote. So you have to intentionally go and grab it, bring it up, refer to it. You know, I find myself, especially, you know, with this, with a new client now, I find myself, you know, on a pretty regular basis, you know, saying, okay, hey, good. Now, does that meet our definition of done based on our team working agreement? Does that story meet our definition of ready based on our team working agreement? I hear what sounds like a blocker. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. Is it a blocker based on what we as a team define would be a blocker? And so referring to those things and bringing those things, you know, back up on a regular basis is really good, but you have to be more intentional because you're remote, right? So the same thing with the business, specifically in terms of ensuring that the work that the team is doing, that those stories directly tie to the business objectives, you know, that are there. And so the business has to be very intentional about making sure that that folks understand what the objectives are, not just the goal for that sprint, not just what this user story is, not just what, you know, that epic is, but really like, this is why we're doing this from a business standpoint. Because it can easily get lost in the shuffle, just especially being remote. It's so easy sometimes for things to get lost, you know, like that, if you're not very intentional about it. All right, so maintaining alignment. So this is another one that is big. So OKRs we're big advocates at AgileThought around OKRs, which are objectives and key results. You don't normally necessarily see these come into play so much at the team level. However, in particular when you're remote and even when you're not, it is very advantageous to specifically have the OKRs to lead the product backlog. Now, what I mean by that is when the epics are being done, when, you know, and then the features that, you know, come out of those things, that you want to make sure that things stay in line with those key results from the OKRs. So the key results, the objectives, basically the aspirational things of what you want to do. You know, we want to have, you know, we want our users, you know, to, you know, to have, I don't know, in a static time while using our portal, right? That's great. So, but what does that mean? Like, how are you going to measure that? So then the key results, that's where we would measure those things. So the objective is a lot more aspirational, whereas the key results become something that's a lot more quantitative. By having those things and then keeping all of the product backlogs that contribute to this objective in line with these key results is very significant with the business reaching the business objectives. So, you know, again, we oftentimes will get caught up with just the day-to-day work that we'll kind of forget about, what these business objectives are. So I'm kind of curious from you all, how do you all normally see, or have you seen teams kept in line in terms of their efforts with the overall business objectives, and especially in the context of, remote work? Anything?
My last team was kind of a unique one, and we didn't really do much as far as like metrics or any sort of, I guess, keeping track of things like that. I know that some of the upper management was working on ways to do it, but it wasn't really a successful endeavor yet, just because we were pretty much driven towards just fixing defects and not actually doing new features or anything. So it was a strict defect driven thing. So it was just kind of a continual, get what we can done type of thing.
Yeah.
And not really a way of knowing, not really a way of being able to break things down into stories as much as you could with a feature, because you just don't know what's involved.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Good. And what about you, Michaela? I'll try to start there.
Yeah. Hey, sorry, I just joined and trying to capture the things. Okay, so I'll be little slow, but trying to understand. Yeah, but the one point which I understood and clear is about like always a product backlog, its result or aiming to achieve the objective. So even like I'm a Scrum Master who currently looking for a job. So when I do the ceremonies like the review and retrospective and other meetings, always I'll ensure like whatever the team committed for the particular sprint, okay, the objective, it might be the PA objective or it might be the sprint goal. Always the team is working towards the goal of the program increment as well as the goal of the particular sprint.
Nice. Yeah. And have you seen any unique challenges around that with doing things remotely?
Not really, actually. So because we already set the bed how it's supposed to be, how it's supposed to work. Okay. So as I said, right now I'm not in a job, so I'm not doing any remote job. Okay. Might be like when I was in a job, once in a while I'll do, but I never seen any challenges. But now the world is totally different because of the COVID. Okay, for sure, like it'll be little different, but I do not know how different it is because I didn't just experience the remote work so far. So I believe this session will help me to understand how I can be proactive and how I can help the team while doing the remote job.
All right. Nice. Okay.
I think you mentioned just to touch on, I think you mentioned one of those, whether it's objectives or key results, you talk about the program increment. And a lot of times the program increments, multiple sprints kind of pulling together towards a single target. That's another way to help convey kind of the overall direction of where the program of work is going. So yep, another item there.
Yeah. And so even during, and this is, I'm saying this specific to when teams are in the type of remote work that people are having to do now. It's good to reinforce the OKRs during certain sprint events if you're using Scrum. So specifically with the reviews, it's good not only to review what the team has accomplished, but to also, during that review, tie it back to those overall objectives, business objectives that are there in the OKRs during the review, or like at the end of the review or something like that. But the point is just to make time to tie it back together to, what the overall objective is there. And then in a retrospective, the same thing, but for the team to say, okay, well, how are we helping to move the OKR forward? Like, is the work we're really doing helping that, or is not helping that? And they can even not so much challenge, but I would say maybe kind of challenge themselves, but also make sure that the product owner is part of that conversation, to say, are we helping really to move us closer towards reaching that OKR? And then, again, the same thing in sprint planning, as well. All right, so when should you include business on dev team efforts when folks are 100% in remote work? And I would say you want to invite them in. One, during your normal events, yes, that's going to happen as far as just sprint planning and all that stuff. But in particular, let's say you're outside of that. So you're not, sprint planning's already happened, you're during the sprint, something comes up, maybe in the daily scrum, or it may come up after the daily scrum is over, but it's it's on a certain day. Well, you're remote. You don't have that same kind of access. So you want to raise the flag a lot sooner than maybe you normally would, because there's risk to delivery. And so that needs to be communicated sooner and quicker than what you might normally do. Because it's even I see it's too easy sometimes for days to kind of go by because you're remote, and I've heard a lot of people say something similar where like Monday is feeling like Friday, Tuesday is feeling like Saturday, Sunday is feeling like Wednesday, like that. It's just kind of messing everyone up, in their head. But you want to raise the flag a lot sooner, on those things. And then on the other side, and when I say raise the flag a lot sooner, that's from the dev team. But from the business side, well, as soon as they realize, hey, there's a change in priority that may be very significant, to the work that the team is doing, then that needs to be raised and communicated to the team as quickly as possible. So that might mean that you're having to communicate during refinement, that something's going on differently. So part of the point here is you have to be a little bit more creative with working within, let's say, a Scrum framework or another Agile approach than what you might normally do, because you have to compensate for the fact that everything is remote and everyone is remote, for the most part. Couldn't tell if you were trying to say something, Justin, or not. Okay, cool. All right. Any thoughts on that? Anything you want to add, Dan?
I think what I would add there is part of the reason maybe to reach out sooner is calendars, at least with the remote work, seem to be getting very full because people are using calendar invites and meetings, etc. So, not, I don't know, to the degree possible, resist the urge to set up a meeting farther and farther out. Just, little reach outs on Microsoft Teams chat, or, people are using Skype or whatever the chat tool of choice is. Just kind of having those frequent communications to invite people in versus setting up a more formal meeting farther out.
Yeah. All right. So that actually really kind of concludes our primary talk for today.
So in a couple of weeks, we have an Ask Me Anything where we're going to have some of our Agile coaches in the Transform practice available and literally ask us anything.